Hi, everyone. This is Evita Duffy and Sean Duffy from Z to X, a new podcast from the Federalist where we talk about pop culture and politics.
Politics. That's right. What are we talking about today?
Well, first, we're going to talk about Thanksgiving and lockdowns and college kids and the effect that that's going to have on them and whether people are going to actually follow those rules or not. And then we're also going to talk about our own Thanksgiving traditions and specifically the Mayflower Compact and
Mayflower Compact.
Right, some history. So it'll be fun.
It'll be fun. All right, so let's talk about what's going on college campuses and kids. So obviously, a lot of people watching the podcast, many of them have gone to college. They know what the college experience is about. You experienced that for the first year, 2 years of your college years, and now you've had to deal with COVID for the last 8-9 months. What's the difference? What's the vibe on campus? Are people complying with the rules? How is it socially?
Yeah, so it's been very depressing, honestly, on campus. You can't, gym times are restricted. You can only go in for an hour. People don't have club meetings anymore that are in person. They're always on Zoom, which means that clubs that I've been a part of have actually fallen apart and just deteriorated because the in-person aspect of it was really important, and then they don't have that anymore. So people stop showing up and it just kind of falls apart. The instruction of having in-person classes is really important and helpful and helps to create relationships between professors and students, and you don't have that anymore. At my school specifically, professors are allowed to choose between in-person and remote classes, and all of them pretty much have chosen to do Zoom classes. So really it's online school. And I think that's the same for a lot of other places.
So a place that a lot of people would congregate, sometimes to study, sometimes to socialize, is the library. Mm-hmm. Is the library open? Are people going to the library?
So the library is interesting. At my school, and at a lot of schools I know do this too, you have to reserve time at the library and you can only stay for a certain amount of time. You reserve that time. Sometimes it's full, depending on what library you want to go to.
Is the library full itself?
And no, and so there's social distancing. So you sit by yourself in the library. You can't talk to other people. You can't meet other people. I think that the real detrimental part of all of this has been relationships, and how kids who would meet in a class together would meet at the library, would meet at a club, aren't having that anymore. It just doesn't exist because COVID has really the rules that COVID has brought has really have been really detrimental to relationships.
And every college campus is different, but a lot of times the cafeteria is a place where people will meet, whether on a meal plan or there's different diners on campus. Mm-hmm. Are those open, and are people meeting in those locations on campus?
So they do have dining, and the school dining. And I don't have a meal plan, but people that do have a meal plan, they have to social distance. So there, you're not even meeting people either. So it's a really kind of a sad place.
So where do young people meet? So, or you might go, well, do people go to bars or restaurants, or they might have a small party in their dorm or their house or a frat or a sorority. Are any of those things happening, socially on campus?
No, I mean, so sororities that, I mean, I'm not in a sorority, but they usually have weekly meetings. Those are not happening. They're happening, but over Zoom. And frats have canceled, at least on my campus. Some places that are more lenient still have parties with their frats, but in Chicago, where rules are very strict, no frat parties. And they actually took it upon themselves to say, we're not going to have any parties. So it's a sad place. It's definitely, but what I think is the most interesting about it is maybe, 15 years ago or more, people really wouldn't be listening to these. They're kids and they think, okay, well, we're not going to die from COVID. I mean, kids that are my age are more likely to die from the seasonal flu than they are from COVID. Right. And so, but with social media and with the pressure that's around them and the way that they've really messaged this and put a lot of fear in kids who really aren't at risk, they're pretty compliant, and so you see them walking around indoors, outdoors with masks, social distancing. It's the whole deal.
So are there any moments that or places that young people are getting together to socialize, or is it all on social media? They all Snapchat and Instagram, or are they actually meeting up in different places, kind of breaking the rules, or is that just completely gone right now?
So what I think it is, there's a lot of peer pressure to not be seen breaking the rules. So I think that individually people will have small groupings together at their apartments, or I guess not in your dorm room because the dorms are very strict, but sometimes in their apartments. And but I think it's a lot of pressure from not just the outside world, but their peers too, saying you need to really follow these guidelines. And so I don't think they actually want to be seen being social. So they might do it And I know they do it, but kind of almost in secret.
But so is there an emotional impact, a social impact that you hear college
Yeah, I
kids
mean,
talk
people
about?
are sad. People will write, kids now more than ever, people will, express their feelings on social media. And you'll see just in comments and in posts, and people have been saying that it's been hard on them mental health wise. It's been a big problem. And I think that once this is finally over, when we see, the kind of, not just for college kids, but across the board, especially for children, the kind of physical and mental abuse that's happening in households, and what lockdowns have done will be come out and be very, sad.
So question for you. So there's limited access to the gym, limited access to the library. You don't have any in-person classes. They're all on Zoom. So you could be at home with me for a couple
Right
weeks
now, yeah.
and still be going to college. So with all those limitations, have we gotten a discount from the university because of the limitation in access to the college experience?
No.
No, we have not gotten a discount. We still get charged full price.
Yeah, so I think that's been a frustration with a lot of students and parents, and our dog is growling now.
Yeah.
Skippy.
The dog sees someone walking outside. But let me ask another question. So your brother goes to the University of Wisconsin in Madison, and same thing as in Chicago. There's a very compliant group of kids, and they all wear their masks inside, outside, socially distanced. We'll shame you if you don't. What he said was, after the election, and after Joe Biden was, claimed the winner, he said they all took the masks off. It was like, we're done. It's over.
It's over. Yeah.
Was that in Chicago
So
too?
no, that was not in Chicago.
Well, actually, you weren't back in Chicago, so you can't tell me that.
But I do. I have friends in Chicago. So
Okay.
actually, I have a friend of mine who was saying that about Madison, and that everybody had taken their masks at the election. So I called up my roommate in Chicago, and she said that they're still wearing their masks, and Chicago has apparently seen a spike, and so Mayor Lori Lightfoot has put on major restrictions in Chicago, more so than at the beginning of the year. And I think it's actually in anticipation for Thanksgiving, and so Thanksgiving is interesting. And I want to talk about that.
Can I say, before you just mentioned Lori Lightfoot, and I have to say, I mean, how hilarious. We're going to shut down salons, and she's going to go to salons, right? She's going to be restrictive on all the citizens, but she's going to go to the big celebration for Joe Biden and his victory. Again, rules apply for everybody but our leaders. And Lori Lightfoot is one of the greatest examples of a rule violator in the Democrat Party.
She's got a history of being hypocritical. During the BLM protests, she had cops staged outside of her house to make sure that she's safe and protected. And she was like, I deserve as a citizen to have my wife and I be protected. But yet the rest of Chicago and businesses and homes are being burned and looted, and it's a mess. But Lori Lightfoot gets herself protected. Right.
We're going to defund the police. We don't defund the police that protect her, right?
Her house, yeah.
Sorry, that's off topic, but you mentioned her, and I couldn't help but point that out, that she was at the celebration and posting stuff on you. But let's talk about Thanksgiving. We're coming to Thanksgiving.
The CDC is saying that college kids should either stay home, or if they stay home as in stay in college, or if they do choose to go home for the holidays, then they need to social distance and wear a mask indoors. Really kind of radical stuff coming from the CDC.
So with young people, college kids, are you seeing that they are going home, or are they staying on campus? Because you stay on campus, I mean, everyone is probably home celebrating Thanksgiving with their own families. I mean, are they getting a Thanksgiving meal there?
Yeah,
what are kids deciding to do?
So I do know a few people who have chosen to stay home because they're deeply afraid of COVID, and they're deeply afraid that they're going to pass it along to their family members. Even though we know that young people are not super spreaders, as they have tried to say that they are. And others have said, okay, well, I'm going to get a test first, and then I'm going to go home. It's really hard to say, because it's in the privacy of your own home, who's going to be wearing a mask inside, and staying 6 feet apart from their grandparents and their aunts and uncles. I guess we probably will never know that. But it's definitely interesting. The CDC wants, I think somebody at the Federalist wrote this great article where they basically made the comparison, saying that Democrats are now instituting, the greatest family separation policy ever with their Thanksgiving policies and COVID.
But I also think there's something unique too, because I think young people in college, maybe those freshmen and sophomore, usually it's a wild, fun, great experience, right? To be in college for the first time, away from your parents, a lot of freedom. Well, because of what you just mentioned, of the things that are happening on campuses, there is not that social interaction that normally takes place on campus. And I think kids are lonely. And
Yeah.
frankly, I bet kids want to go home and see their parents and their families because they yearn for that social interaction. And again, it's not their friends, it's not the big party, but it is like, I get to hang out and talk and socialize and be around the people that I love. I want to go home and do that. Where sometimes in prior years, maybe some kids like, hey, we're not coming home. This is like, I want to come home because I miss that in my life.
In this generation especially, there's been so many studies that have come out and said that social media is really isolating, and kids nowadays are more lonely than ever. And so of course they want to go home. And I think that the environment on campus is definitely, I mean, most schools have implemented a tattletale kind of a thing where they, I mean, I know lots and lots of freshmen who live in the dorms especially, that have been reported for not wearing masks, for not social distancing, for being in a group where there's, more than 5 people. And so it's really kind of a
you got to train them to be little communists early, and that's what they're doing on college campus. Follow the rules, tell on each other, and if you don't, you could be punished. But we want to make sure that the non-rule follower gets punished on campus, right? So tell on each other, and they actually do, which is crazy, right?
They do, yeah, and that's why I said that people who do hang out in groups are doing it in private, kind of secretly, because they don't want to be reported. It's their peers who they're afraid of too. So it's,
and so back in the day when we went to college, some people would get together and consume alcohol when they were underage. And if you had people in your dorm or around you that would tell on you, they would be isolated. Not the rule violators who had some beer in their dorm. But now everyone is compliant and they're telling on each other. That's completely foreign to so many of us that went to college, whether it was 10 years ago or however many years ago I went, which I can't remember, probably 25 years ago. That is a really unique change. But speaking of Thanksgiving, let's talk about maybe our own family and the history of Thanksgiving. You wrote an article for the Federalist about the Mayflower Compact. So, and I had actually asked Evita about this a couple of days ago. I'm like, what was in the compact again? So she loves history. So tell us about the compact itself, the kind of the start of Thanksgiving. Give us a history lesson on the podcast.
So,
by the way, they can read the article too, but you're going to get it here live in person from the author.
Right. So, well, first of all, you should go on the Federalist website and read all of their articles that are coming out for the 1620 Project, which is just kind of like a take back of the narrative that we've seen recently with the 1619 Project, and a celebration of America and her ideals and our history, with multiple articles by really renowned historians and academics. But this article that I wrote, I'm not an academic, but it's really easy to learn this history if you just look. So the Mayflower Compact is a document signed by the Pilgrims when they were on their way to the New World, and it basically, established the right to create your own laws as a people, and it also established religious freedom in the colony, and it was an inspiration for other documents to come. So like the Constitution and the Declaration of Independence, which we know influenced other documents and democracies across the world. And so it's really kind of a starting point, whereas 400 years ago, before the Mayflower Compact, the Magna Carta established law, but by the king, the Mayflower Compact is law established by the people.
What I think is, so everyone that came over, were they all pilgrims?
No, so so they were, so the Pilgrims, they wanted to ensure that their journey was successful, that the colony was successful, and so they brought in other people who they called strangers, who weren't separatists, right? And they were gonna, they came for their own purposes, and they wanted to make sure that we were all together on this, in creating this colony, and this community, and so they had them sign it as well, and really kind of profoundly established religious freedom for themselves, and also for their fellow travelers,
and establish self-governance, not just for the Pilgrims, but for the non-Pilgrims who were on the voyage as well. They all got to participate in the government, which was, again, this founding concept of democracy and freedom, which is actually very cool. And did the Mayflower Compact have any influence on our founders who did the Declaration of Independence and who wrote the Constitution?
Yeah, it did. And I think one of the saddest parts about this is that when you look at what do kids learn about in school, I remember being young and learning about the Mayflower Compact in, I think, elementary school, and we focused on how the Mayflower Compact, when the Pilgrims established their government later on, came up with more rules. They didn't include women, which is silly, and women weren't able to sign the compact, basically. So I think that is kind of a silly thing to focus on, because we know that later on, Western, civilization a democratic republic established the right to vote for all races and for men and women. And so to focus on the shortcomings of the document instead of what it brought in the future, I think is really kind of silly. But indicative of what we do now in American history.
Which is they want to apply today modern standards to this 1600 document, which that was the common practice. Not right, it wasn't a right practice, but that was the common practice, and everyone did it, right? So obviously we've evolved over time, and it was Republicans who gave the women the right to vote, by the way, and let African Americans vote as well. I mean, those were Republican movements that took place in our Congress, which
but
I'm
it wouldn't
very
have
proud
been
of.
possible without those documents in
That's
the
right.
first place, who kind of established this right of the people versus a monarch. So it's sad, but as at this Thanksgiving, our family, we watch documentaries, and we read the actual documents, no matter how maybe the speech is kind of old and you can't understand it, but it's still good to hear. And so those are things that you can do with your family this Thanksgiving.
You can teach your kids,
Yeah.
the history of Thanksgiving, because oftentimes our kids aren't learning that in school. So if you don't teach them, if you don't talk to them about why we celebrate Thanksgiving, they won't know. Sometimes when you talk about, women didn't have the right to vote or sign the compact, sometimes I feel like in my house, I don't have a right to vote. We've kind of reversed this. The women have taken control now, and they get all the votes. There's only three boys to 8 girls. So
well, we have the kids dress up, and they dress up as pilgrims and Indians, no matter what you think of that. It's good. And it's a celebration of America, and Thanksgiving is a unification of both of the pilgrims and Indians coming together and saying, we're gonna create this meal together, and we have this friendship and this bond. And Democrats, I mean, the New York Times came out with an article recently that was saying that Thanksgiving is a sham holiday because it undermines all of the horrible things that the settlers and pilgrims and other groups who came inflicted on Native Americans.
I would just note that at that time, I don't know if there's equality in the Native American tribes between women and men. All over the world, whether you're in Africa or in Europe, this was the case all over the planet at that time. And again, we've evolved since then.
I think it says something about the left and what they try to do. I mean, they try to focus on everything that's horrible about America. We have this narrative of shame, and now we have a holiday that's about Thanksgiving and about unity and a really great moment. And they want to say, they slash it out like this is a racist holiday. It undermines horrible things. Let's focus on the bad things, not the good things. And honestly, this perversion of American history is really detrimental to a lot of people and the next generation of Americans who see their country in a really negative light, who aren't proud to be here, aren't proud to be American.
And they don't focus on all the great things that this country has offered, not just the people who live here, but the world as a whole. I mean, this idea of liberty and self-governance that came from the compact has changed people's lives everywhere and brought more prosperity, more people out of poverty into the middle class, and we should celebrate that. And we can also note that we haven't been perfect, but we should celebrate at Thanksgiving the blessings that we actually do have to still, for how long we're not sure, but live in a free world, live in a democracy, that we have a roof over our head and food at our table and family with us. Those things should be celebrated. And I look at what the left is doing, and this is not, I know, our topic, but with the left, one of the main forces against communism, the most valid force against socialism, is the family, because families usually rely on each other. The extended family and the nuclear family, we rely on each other, we help each other, and then therefore you don't need the government. But if you don't have the family, all of a sudden you need the government, you need the politicians, you need the power brokers to take care of you. And frankly, we can't let that happen. We still have to celebrate our families, our units. We have to celebrate America and freedom and democracy and the prosperity that we have in this country. And that's what Thanksgiving is all about. And fly your flag, cook your turkey, hug your kids and your parents and your aunts and uncles, as long as they don't have COVID, and you have a great time. Let's celebrate what's so great about America.
Yeah, I think that's a great place to end on.
All right, from the Federalist, hey, we're hanging out, Evita and Sean.
See you guys next time.
Yeah, we'll see you guys later. Bye-bye.